Good evening, everybody, and welcome to a special live stream edition of Sports Crunch with D. Crom. I'm your host, David Cromwell. We are officially less than 1 week away from our annual football Festivus, football Christmas, football Hanukkah, you name it, the NFL draft. And this NFL draft is, in the words of Hall of Fame executive Gil Brandt, the most unusual draft he has ever experienced in his life of observing the NFL draft, whether it's as an executive, a scout, or a member of the media. And my buddy Nick Kendell of MileHighHuddle.com, based on the circumstances on how this draft is being conducted with COVID, no combine, teams not being able to visit campuses as much as they would like to. It's very possible that we could see a lot more surprises than usual, and we could see these mocks be more off than usual.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I think Lance Zierlein was just saying that in a recent interview. Like, teams are saying, like, wow, we don't have a top 100 grade on this guy, and there's guys being mocked in the back end of the first round. So it's going to be a wild one. I'm excited for it. I don't know, a lot of people, and I know it's more about the prospects of, getting to live through this, but the pageantry of the NFL draft, that doesn't really do anything for me, the walk on the carpet or this pick brought to you by Chevy, whatever. But the unpredictability of the draft and the fits and how it all works out and the gamesmanship and the unpredictable trades, I'm ready, man. It's why we all, it's like football crack, right? I mean, we're addicted.
Absolutely. Next Thursday night, cannot get here soon enough. Yeah. And let's talk a little bit about some of the latest rumors floating around. And folks, let me give you another reminder. As Greg Gabriel, who was the Chicago Bears director of college scouting for a decade, said on my podcast a couple years ago, do not believe a word from any team right now. As he told the story, like after the draft, he would confess to members of the media that he spoke to all the lies he said and why he told all those lies. So, and we could see, based on the circumstances of this draft, as we alluded to, there could be more lies than ever before this year. Like, for example, does any person with a common sense knowledge of football believe the 49ers traded a fortune for Mac Jones? I don't.
You know what? That's the thing, though, right? It's the NFL draft. Nobody thought a couple years ago that Clelin Ferrell was going to go forward to the Raiders, but all it takes is one guy to like one person, and everybody's mock draft is torn up into shreds. So I'll believe it when I see it, but I'm not outright completely dismissing it because if that's Kyle Shanahan's guy, then okay, like he's smarter than I am with him when it comes to football. So if he sees something there or something clicks, then good luck. I would not do it, but I'm not making that decision, so we'll see. I'm hoping they do it.
Yeah, I know as a Broncos fan, you're hoping they do it, and there's a side of me that does too, but as somebody with a lot of respect for the 49ers organization and Kyle Shanahan for what he's done to the league with his scheme, he and his dad, of course, I would be much happier as a general fan of the game if they went with Lance or Fields personally, but on a more grander emotional level, just so to speak.
Nope. Need him in Denver. Need one of them in Denver.
Yes, I agree with that, but you gotta wear both our hats here, not just our Broncos hat, but our football hats here. But that's just
only a Bronco hat here.
Well, that's just how I operate. Even though I'm literally wearing a Bronco hat, I operate with a general love of the game above all else. And two interesting things came out this week. First was Devontae Smith, obviously the 2020 Heisman Trophy winner. He does all the little things right that a wide receiver needs to do to succeed in the NFL. He gets open and catches everything. That's pretty much all you want out of a wide receiver. But he dropped 4 pounds since the Alabama Pro Day from 170 to 166. And no wide receiver that's 6 feet tall and 170 pounds or lighter has been drafted that high in rounds 1, 2, and 3 since Marvin Snoop Minnis of the Chiefs in 2001. And based on the Smith being below 170 right now, how far can we see him fall?
Again, it's that one thing where all it takes is one team, but there's going to be a lot of teams where he's not on their board, right? Because he's going to be an outlier when it comes to the size and height threshold. It's not just one or the other, it's both. And that's just going to make, small guys, especially playing wide receiver, if you're smaller, more likely to get dinged up, more likely to get injured. and those thresholds matter. So all it takes is one team to like him, and all it takes is one wide receiver coach or offensive coordinator to say, like, you know what, precedent be damned, I'm going to get that guy. Like, just watch the tape. But there'll be teams that are scared off by him. And you don't, obviously he can be an outlier. He's already been an outlier, right? Like, to get where he's already at, he's already an outlier. But still, you don't want to just totally throw precedents and historical data to the wind. There is predictive power in that sample size. So there is something to it. But I mean, he's beaten odds so far. I'm not going to bet against Devonta Smith, but yes. I mean, with any wide receiver landing spots, half the battle, if not more.
Yeah, and Albert Breer sent out a tweet a couple days ago with another example of a similar player. And that player is Hall of Famer Isaac Bruce, who will finally be getting his golden jacket after a year delay due to COVID this summer. And Isaac Bruce came into the league weighing just 173 pounds, and he was a 6 feet tall or plus. And Devonta Smith, I think he has more than enough room in his frame to add. He's currently 166. He could add 7 more pounds to get to 173. And if you look at Isaac Bruce of the career he had, Devonta Smith could project very similarly to him.
Yeah, I mean, that, again, I've heard Marvin Harrison as another comp for him for being the smaller guy. And the thing is, he doesn't play small, right? Like, he'll go up, he'll fight for the ball. He was a gunner. He really good at getting off press for Alabama too. So I wouldn't bet against him. He is my wide receiver 3. I won't lie to you. I'm not going to say I don't give a darn about any of it. Like, I still have Jamar Chase 1 and Jalen Waddle 2. Yeah. But after that, I would take him. I'd bet on him, and I wouldn't take him if I was a wide receiver needy team. I probably would not take him top 10, but top 15, top 20 in that 10, especially in that 11 to 20 range. Hell yeah, I'll take that risk every time.
Yes. And before we get to the bread and butter of our program tonight, it was reported by Tony Pauling in March that some teams were moving Justin Fields down to Justin Fields based on talent and experience alone. Is arguably the best quarterback in this draft class, not named Trevor Lawrence, although you could make a case for Zach Wilson or Trey Lance, as you alluded to. But Justin Fields, I think people have been a little too harsh on him throughout this process. But it was revealed by Ian Rappaport and Top Pelissero this week that Justin Fields has been open in his conversations with NFL clubs about his living with epilepsy, which makes him more vulnerable to seizures. That said, Alan Faneca, who was recently voted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame a couple months ago, he had a long, productive career as a guard for the Steelers. He had epilepsy, but he carved out a Hall of Fame NFL career out of it. And most medical experts, at the very least, are saying this should not be a big deal. But are you surprised? Would you be surprised if this is the reason why some teams might be a little hesitant on Justin Fields?
I mean, it's another thing where this is a process where you're looking to tear guys down. I mean, as terrible as it is, right? It's like we started at a perfect prospect. Okay, now what can't you do? Why are these reasons? Give me reasons that I shouldn't pick you, right? So I think this is another thing that can go in that category for Justin Fields. I personally think it's a pretty small category. I'm also not a neurologist. I am a scientist, but I'm not going to pretend to be a neurologist.
He's an epidemiologist, by the way. He's an epidemiologist. Listen to him about COVID, folks.
But I'm not going to pretend to be a neurologist, so it would really depend on what my team doctors have to say about it. Same with Jalen Phillips. So both of those guys talented, but if that's something that, let's say you have Zach Wilson and Justin Fields side by side, dead heat, and you're like, okay, well, one of these guys has epilepsy and seizure concerns, the other doesn't. If that's, you're looking for reasons to put these guys on to separate them. So for some people that might be the difference maker, but I've also read that Justin Fields' family has had this in his history. And also it's something that his family and many people in this age group grew out of, because the human brain, specifically for males, doesn't complete forming until about age 25, 26. So that's something that he could easily grow out of.
Yes, and now let's take all the recent clues that we've got into a brief 10-pick mock, so to speak. We're not going to do the whole first round. We're just going to do the top 10 picks. And the first 2 picks are set in stone, with obviously Trevor Lawrence to Jacksonville at 1 and Zach Wilson to the Jets at 2. But let's talk about Zach Wilson for a moment. Zach Wilson, he's a guy with a lot of gifts, to be sure. Yeah. But a big concern many people have about Zach Wilson is he had such an amazing offensive line at BYU, and the BYU scheme is very hard to translate to the next level. And a lot of people are saying it's an alarming mystery as to how he'll function under pressure. And with the little evidence we do have, it suggests that he's probably nowhere near as good under pressure as he is with a clean pocket. So that's a lot. But epilepsy aside, why would the Jets lean Zach Wilson over Justin Fields or Trey Lance with the second overall pick in your view?
I think it's his ability to make throws off platform and out of structure. That's probably the biggest thing now. I understand that, it's the 1 year of great tape. And it's also, you mentioned it, it's not that his offensive line was that good. They were really good. Don't get me wrong, but they also went up against no real, truly disruptive pass rushers outside of the Coastal Carolina guy. But Zach Wilson, it's not that only he had time, he had space, right? Like he didn't really have to navigate a tight pocket or step up or do a bunch of things. There are examples of it out there. It's not like it's completely never had a guy in them. He's not playing 7-on-7 out there, but it does add a level of unknown for his evaluation. But I think it's a lot of people are gravitated to his attitude, right, as well, kind of a little bit of a Baker Mayfield boxy to him, maybe not to the same extent of the chip on the shoulder, but that's something that I do see and have heard about him. And again, this is in the NFL, you still need to be able to operate within the pocket, but what separates a lot of these younger, great quarterbacks from just the middle of the pack is their ability to do stuff out of structure, extend plays, et cetera, et cetera. And I think that you see that a little bit more on tape with Wilson than you do Fields and Lance, where it's a little bit more, not that those guys don't have that ability to do it. It just doesn't look as natural. It's a little bit more labored to do that right now. And I believe Justin Fields and Trey Lance can get there, but I don't think it's as day one ad lib ability that you see with Zach Wilson, who brings a little bit of flair and poetry to stuff outside of structure.
Yeah, and with Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen, the bells of the quarterback ball in the National Football League right now, I definitely can see why the Jets would lead towards Zach Wilson based on the reasoning you just gave there, Nick. And now at pick 3, the 49ers said, yes, some people are keeping up the Mac Jones talk, but there is just as much Justin Fields and Trey Lance buzz to the Niners at 3. And the 49ers, in my opinion, cannot go wrong with either Trey Lance or Justin Fields. And but for the sake of digging back for clues for a second, here's why my initial guess, and it's a slight guess, would be that they're going to take Trey Lance at 3, is that the Atlanta Falcons at 4 were rumored to be in love with him even before the Niners made that trade. And the Niners might have traded up in front of the Falcons to get Trey Lance. And based on what Mark Schofield, our mutual friend and quarterback expert analyst extraordinaire, said on my podcast, he thinks that the 49ers are the best possible landing spot for Trey Lance more than any other team in the league. And just connecting those dots makes it a kind of guess that it is Trey Lance, but I wouldn't be shocked out of my shoes if it was Fields. And if it actually is Mac Jones, I will pan the pick, but I am not going to try to act surprised given that the tea leaves were there. My guess right now is Lance, but it could still be Mac Jones, and it could obviously still be Justin Fields as well. But the Niners can't go wrong with either Lance or Fields. Can they?
I mean, they can, but it'll only be with hindsight bias, right? Like we won't know until we know. Gosh, I've talked to a lot of people and a lot of people who have very good sources. So a lot of it's secondhand in that regard, but they were right about Kinlaw. They were right about the McGlinchey, and the same folks are saying Mac Jones. So granted, the stakes were not as high, right? Trading up to 3, that changes the game a little bit. But it will be interesting. And my understanding is that Kyle Shanahan contractually has the right to make the San Francisco 49ers first round pick every year. So even if the 49ers front office traded up for a Fields or Lance, it still could be Mac Jones, because if that's Kyle Shanahan's guy, that's Kyle Shanahan's guy. So we will see. My gut when the trade went through was it was for Trey Lance, just because the scheme fit, the tools. He doesn't have to play year 1 because of Jimmy Garoppolo. And Mike McDaniel, that outside zone stretch scheme. I mean, look out for Trey Lance there. But I don't know. I really don't know what it's going to be. I'm more of an analyst than a prognosticator when it comes to the draft. So I'll tell you what I think a team should do, not what I'm hearing they will do or predicting what they will do. I would probably go Justin Fields, just because he's more accurate. I trust him more. But I love Trey Lance too. And if they went Mac Jones, I mean, I get it. It's not what I would do, but I get it. So, but again, my gut, my head is telling me Mac, because a lot of people who are more connected than me are saying that. And again, all it takes is one guy. Even if a bunch of people are saying this, over here you can't see it on the screen. A bunch of people are saying this. NFL decision makers are in their own bubble, right? Every year they tune out to what the media says, and we'll see how it turns out. But my gut tells me it'll be Trey Lance, which bums me out because I think he'd be great in Denver.
Yeah. So for the sake of this exercise, we will put Trey Lance to the 49ers at 3 in this mini mock of ours. And another key thing about the 49ers, though, is you're missing another guy with some underrated power in that organization, and his name is Adam Peters. They're I don't know what his title is, whether it's college scouting director or a pro personnel player, vice president of player personnel. John Lynch, I think, is more of a figurehead, and I think Kyle Shanahan and Adam Peters have more discretion over him when it comes to the draft and this pick in particular. So I think the decision could very well come down to Adam Peters and Kyle Shanahan talking to one another. And Adam, we know he worked in Denver for several years. He had a key hand in building that Super Bowl roster around zombie Peyton Manning, so to speak. And whatever Adam Peters is telling Kyle Shanahan, we got to assume Kyle has Adam's ear. And if Adam wants Trey Lance just as much as John Lynch does, or if he wants Justin Fields, that could be the direction Kyle Shanahan goes in based on what Adam Peters tells him.
Yeah, it's one of those things. I remember years ago with Darnold, right? Darnold and Baker Mayfield. Everyone's like, oh, Darnold going 1. Darnold's a little bit Josh Allen, Darnold going 1, Darnold going 1. And then about, 5 hours before the draft, it's like, it's Baker Mayfield. So I think that's something where you're going to hear a lot of things between now and the day of the draft. But you're going to hear everything, every single name of those 3 quarterbacks listed at 3. I don't really care to hear it until it's the day of the draft, and then I might put a little bit of weight on it.
Indeed, and so far this mock, Trevor Lawrence at 1 to Jacksonville, Zach Wilson at 2 to the Jets, and Trey Lance at 3 to the Niners. And now you got the Atlanta Falcons, and they have a very tough decision. And this is where the draft essentially starts. You got a new GM in Terry Fontenot, a new head coach in Arthur Smith, and you got Ryan, who is no spring chicken. He's going to be 36 this year, and but you did redo his contract, which essentially locks him into Atlanta for at least the next 2 seasons. But you got to be thinking long term as well, like the Packers did with Brett Favre and Aaron Rodgers. Some people say, oh, the Falcons are going to ruin their salary cap by taking another quarterback and 4 because they're going to tie up 70% of their cap in 6 players. It was the same if they took Kyle Pitts. Actually, these people are clueless. I definitely understand that as Broncos fans, we want the Falcons to go in another direction, but play devil's advocate for a moment. Why should the Atlanta Falcons take a quarterback and 4, whether it be Justin Fields or Trey Lance?
I mean, it's the most important position in football, and it's one of those things when we saw it with Terry Fontenot, where the New Orleans Saints were not against stacking talent in the quarterback room. They had Drew Brees. They went out and paid Teddy Bridgewater. They paid Taysom Hill, which don't ask me. And they also then brought in Jameis Winston. I know Drew Brees was a shell of himself this last year, but they kept stacking that room, and they didn't give a hoot. What did that mean for Drew Brees? We need talent in that room. So that's first off, and I think that's a good strategy in general, just because it's the most important position. I'd rather you take shots. Another reason, and you talked about it, Matt Ryan, he's older. He's not been the issue in Atlanta by far, but still, if you're looking at that pick, any first round rookie quarterback is thinking about it over, the next decade. So throw out 2021 out the window. The team you have right now, anyway, it's probably most likely going to be what you have next year. And also, I know that the contract, the way they restructured it, it's like, oh man, the Falcons can't move on from Matt Ryan. I mean, did we just not see what happened with Carson Wentz and Jared Goff and their contracts? I mean, if Matt Ryan can fetch back, and he probably could on the open market next year, a first round pick, then they'll eat the dead cap. So I don't know. I mean, I know it's not the best. You don't want to be dealing with that dead cap, but it's what it is.
It's totally worth all that money if you draft a Justin Fields or Trey Lance at 4, and then have them sit behind Matt Ryan for a half a year to a full year, and then trade Matt Ryan after the season, eat the money, and get a pick in return. I'd swallow that any day of the week. Seriously, the Falcons, in my opinion, they have to take whoever's left of Fields or Lance, especially if the 49ers go with one of the two, or whoever the 49ers go. If they go with Mac Jones, they got to take Lance or Fields. If they take Lance, they got to go Fields. If they take Fields, Falcons got to go Lance. So that's just my strong opinion on what the Atlanta Falcons have to do, because you're starting anew with a new regime. You got to make a long-term pick. But the tea leaves right now, and they are just tea leaves, folks, keep that in mind, suggest that they're going to go with the best non-quarterback that they drafted for, which is Kyle Pitts of Florida. And Kyle Pitts, this is kind of like, as Dane Brugler said several days ago, it's similar with Quentin Nelson. Kyle Pitts doesn't play a position that is of high value, so to speak, but he is a potential future Hall of Fame type talent that you just jump on no matter what in the first round. It's like, if you don't want to take a quarterback, and if Kyle Pitts is on the board, you got to write it on your card, Kyle Pitts, no matter what. And that is the direction many people believe the Falcons are leaning in right now. And how dangerous would an offense with Kyle Pitts, Julio Jones, and Calvin Ridley be?
Let's see how that offensive line holds up. Right? I mean,
right, totally.
They can get the ball out quickly, obviously, but Matt Ryan, like you said, no spring chicken, and the mobility is, he can get the ball out there, but still, you don't want him taking hits, and Falcons haven't really run the ball very well either recently. So it'll be a fun trio of weapons, but I do wonder if we're kind of going back down the path of what we saw at Dallas last year.
Yeah, but for the sake of this mock exercise, we got. Should we give the Falcons Justin Fields or Kyle Pitts at 4?
I think Pitts. If we're going to be predictive. I think if Trey Lance fell to 4, I think we'd have more of a conversation there. It just does not seem like they're as in on Fields, but it's BS season, so we could look like idiots. And
Daryl Ledbetter, who knows the Falcons inside out, covers them for the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. He's a veteran on the NFL beat, has been a veteran for decades. He thinks that if the Falcons passed up Justin Fields, a Georgia native, for crying out loud, that there would be fans selling back their season tickets, so to speak.
Well, yeah, I know we're outspoken fans as well about the Broncos and what they should do, but the moment those guys start listening to what we have to say and taking that as the direction, especially casual fans, which you and I are not, because we're on here talking football, but that's the moment you probably need to give up your position of power, because you need to trust your own guts and the people that you hired around you. So we'll see. But Kyle Pitts, I think, is the way to go.
Kyle Pitts at 4. And now the Cincinnati Bengals. Logic says, look at what happened to Joe Burrow last year. And I love Joe Burrow to death. Don't get me wrong. I still think he could be a top 10 quarterback in this league. But because that offensive line was it was a joke last year. Let me just put it bluntly, a joke. It was a joke last year. He ended up with a multi-ligament knee injury. And you got a potentially generational tackle prospect staring you right in the face in Penei Sewell. And yes, he's a little raw and a little rough around the edges because of the system he played in at Oregon, which doesn't ask a tackle to backpedal as much, so to speak. But you just see the athleticism and the tenacity he brings. I think he would make the most sense. But Joe Goodberry, who knows the Bengals very well, is adamant that they're on a Jamar Chase and a reunion with him and Joe Burrow. How big of a mistake will this be if they do end up going Jamar Chase?
Well, if both these guys hit their ceilings, Jamar Chase is the more valuable player because wide receivers make a bigger impact. I mean, look no farther than look up north, Cincinnati, Joe Thomas, a decade, 15 years, first ballot Hall of Famer, one of the best offensive tackles I've seen play live. How good the Bengals or the Browns team with Joe Thomas, right? Like one offensive lineman only can move the needle so much, right? Because they're not moving around. They're not somebody that you can isolate. Where an offensive weapon can make a difference. They'll provide more wins above replacement, so to speak. So if Jamar Chase and Penei Sewell both hit, Jamar Chase actually is the more valuable player. And also if they're going to run more Joe Burrow stuff where the ball's getting out quick, more 5 wide stuff, and Joe Burrow's getting the ball out quickly, then, maybe you don't need that strong of an offensive line. You still want to protect him. Don't get me wrong, but it's more about 5 guys across rather than one really good guy. So I hear the argument. I mean, I get it. I think Penei Sewell also, everything I've read and heard is that media and the NFL are not one for one on that. Penei Sewell has been built up to be this generational prospect. He's not. He's probably closer to all the top 5 guys last year, which is fine. That's good. But let's not make him out to be Jonathan Ogden or Orlando Pace out there, right? So I get it. I understand it. And then the Bengals can attack multiple resources out there, throw in a couple draft assets, add some more offensive line. Because again, offensive line, it's better to have four guys who are Bs and one guy who is C than one A plus and the rest being Ds and Fs, because weaknesses will kill you on the offensive line.
Excellent point. As you and I have talked to each other before, guys who can't on an offensive line often cancel out those who can, so to speak. And that goes for any type of endeavor, whether it's playing in a musical ensemble, a dance ensemble, or an offensive line in football. The way you function together as a team, you're only as strong as your weakest link. And I definitely see that. And another part of the argument for Jamar Chase at 5 IC is that the Bengals, they could go with an Alex Leatherwood in round 2 after taking Jamar Chase at 5, or Dylan Radins, and then they could do a double dip with like a Spencer Brown in round 3 or a James Hudson round 3, who they probably know better than most other teams because he played the best ball, his best college ball at Cincinnati. So the depth of this tackle class of the options in rounds 2 and 3 might give them leeway to take Jamar Chase. So let's give them Jamar Chase in this mock exercise. And now, starting here at pick 6, this is where trades can start.
Ring.
The Miami Dolphins. Well, it's not just the Dolphins at 6 that are a candidate to trade down. The Lions at 7, the Panthers at 8, and the Broncos at 9. They are all highly considering moving down if things don't work out for them, so to speak. But the Broncos might be eyeing a potential move up to the Dolphins if either Justin Fields or Trey Lance falls. And yes, I know some in the Denver media are saying, no, the Broncos are not looking to trade up. But based on what I've heard some other people say in the Broncos beat, having a new sheriff in town, George Payton, and Payton isn't necessarily the guy with the loosest lips on the planet, so to speak. And with John Elway, it was much easier to pick up on what the Broncos were doing in the draft. George Payton is doing a much better job than John Elway did of throwing out mixed signals and keeping things under wraps. Does it appear that way to you?
I mean, we won't know until we know, right? Like when the draft comes, like if the Broncos trade up to 4, then he's going to make a lot of people look foolish, right? There were a lot of people who are speaking very emphatically about what's happening look like they had no idea, or they were being fed BS. So we won't know until we know. I think the Broncos would be interested in moving up for Justin Fields or Trey Lance, but I also think they do not want to give up that 2022 first. I think there is a price that they are not looking to go past. So we'll see. I mean, there are people who are, again, way more connected than me, and I would have no problem moving up for these guys. And I think that if the way the board fell here, if Pitts and Sewell were gone 4 and 5, I think Miami would be very eager to make a move with Denver, because I think they would be very happy to take a chance that one of Waddle or Smith would be there at 9.
Yeah, Pitts and Chase.
Excuse me, that's what I meant. Yeah, Pitts and Chase going 4 and 5.
Yes,
okay, well, there's our tier 2 guy.
It's a potential deal to be had for sure. And the Dolphins, for Denver specifically, and also for the Dolphins, because they like to accumulate all these assets. They're like introducing their own version of Astro Ball to the NFL. And after trading back to 12 with San Francisco, and then trading back up to 6 with the Eagles, they want to recoup some of the value they lost in that Eagles trade. They want as many darts as possible. So a trade with Denver makes the most sense, because they're the team that the Dolphins don't want to trade back that many spots. But another team that I wouldn't necessarily sleep on either. Yes, I obviously know they already trade for Sam Darnold. I wouldn't sleep on the Panthers trading up to 6 either, because as Joseph Person, their lead beat writer, who's currently with The Athletic, says, they are enamored with Justin Fields. And if Justin Fields fell past 5, I wouldn't be surprised to see David Tepper, the Panthers, be aggressive and try to move up for him and have him and Darnold battle out and trade one of them at the beginning of the season.
Man, that would be really interesting to see. They gave up assets for Darnold, so I would say they're dealing with a little less hand, but it really comes down to what that team's willing to pay then, right? Like your top of your budget is different than another team's, even if you have more to deal or more capital. So we'll see. I think Panthers are much more of a if Fields fall to us a date, we'll take him than trading up, but you never know. David Tepper, he's he's aggressive and he might go make a play. So we'll see.
Yes, but for this exercise, we will. Don't accuse the Broncos bias, folks. We are not saying this will happen. It's far from a guarantee that will happen. As a matter of fact, I just want to share Andrew Mason, our mutual friend who covers the Broncos. He tweeted at me today his crystal ball for what he thinks will happen. He says 40% chance Broncos trade back, 30% chance they move up for a quarterback, 30% chance they stay put and take a Rashawn Slater or Penei Sewell or somebody like that. Translation, it's a toss-up. Nobody knows. Yeah. Anything can happen. And that was the best guesstimate I have heard from a Broncos beat reporter so far. That was a very fair way that he put it. But for this exercise, we are going to have the Broncos moving up to 6 and the Dolphins trading back and the Broncos giving up their second rounder and third rounder next year to their second rounder this year and their third rounder in 2022 to move up 3 spots for the Dolphins, and the Dolphins move back 3 spots to recoup some value. And the Broncos at 6 take Justin Fields from Ohio State. And if the Broncos do take Justin Fields, he is likely the starter in week 1. Wouldn't you say so?
Probably. I mean, they might still make a move like bringing in a Nick Foles or something, just, if for some reason he's not getting it right away or whatever. I mean, Nick Foles has familiarity with Shermer's system, but Justin Fields, 2 years, big-time football in the Big Ten. I mean, obviously has work to do, just like any rookie would, but he has the tools where he can kind of figure it out as he goes. And, let's celebrate, man. I think that's the ideal scenario for the Broncos. The ideal scenario would be one of those guys falling to 9, but I think if you want one, you're probably going to have to go up and get one, but the board has to fall the right way.
It most certainly does. And but let's for hypotheticals here, let's say the 49ers field at 3 and the Falcons take Pitts at 4 and the Broncos trade up to 6 and take Trey Lance. Do you think Trey Lance could beat out Drew Lock and become the starter week 1 despite some people around the league saying that he might need a year on the bench?
The thing is, a lot of people are basing that on him just playing in 2019, and we can't really speak to what growth he's had over this past year, right? Because we don't have the tape to evaluate. So that's not something you're really going to know until camp comes around and you're seeing like, wow, this guy is getting the playbook like that. He's out there making plays. Like, I know that he didn't play last year, but this guy's been working over the last year and maybe even gotten better because of that, because he's been getting specific training, not having to worry about executing game plans. He's been working on becoming a quarterback. So, or maybe that makes it worse. Maybe he's like the time away from the field made him so he's a little bit even further away because it's been a year off. We won't know until you know. But I think that outright dismissing him completely, I think is a dangerous game. He might, and again, another guy who, because of his athleticism, because of his intelligence, because of the arm talent, you can probably rookie year Cam Newton, a scheme for him. And it doesn't have to be the most complicated thing in the world. His tools can carry him to a competent offense.
Yes, and this is why I think the Broncos make more sense for Trey Lance than some people think. It's because Mike Shula is the quarterback's coach, and Mike Shula got that MVP season out of Cam Newton, so to speak. And
his rookie year, he broke all the passing records. And everyone's like, oh, this guy's a raw quarterback. He only played 1 year at Auburn. Yeah. Obviously, it was a great season. MVP, championship. But 1 year, it's like, oh, can this guy even play year 1? Breaks passing records, even though he's not the most accurate passer, and is a couple years later MVP. So, yeah, I wouldn't sleep on it at all.
Me neither. And now moving on to the 7th pick of the Detroit Lions, they're another candidate that wants to trade back, and I don't blame them for wanting to trade back because it's at this juncture of the draft where the board gets jumbled. And after, as you said on my podcast a month or so ago, after like the 4 quarterbacks and Kyle Pitts and Penei Sewell and Jamar Chase, so to speak, there's a drop-off. But that drop-off scrunches a lot of players together. It could last until all the way to the end of the first round, even the beginning of the second round, for crying out loud. That's how close in value, in proximity, the value is between picks 7 to 32, if not longer, so to speak, as you mentioned. So, and the Lions, given all the needs on their roster, starting under a new regime and armed with 4 first-round picks in 2022 and 2023, 2 and 22, 2 and 23, they might want to add more to the cupboard to build the roster. Add the player that they have their eyes on, Micah Parsons, due to the character red flags, he could be had in the teens. And a team that Benjamin Albright said that could be looking to trade up with the Lions is the Los Angeles Chargers, because they are looking at a potential reunion between Penei Sewell and the quarterback he blocked for Oregon, Justin Herbert. He won the Outland Trophy blocking for Justin Herbert, and I cannot blame the Chargers for doing such a thing. To, as they say, quarterback's the house, offensive tackle's the insurance. What better insurance for Justin Herbert than his college teammate Penei Sewell? We'll have the Chargers moving up to 7 to take Penei Sewell at 7.
I do want to caution any team moving up for a non-quarterback, typically that, especially in the top 10, just historically does not tend to work out. So I understand moving up for a guy, but typically the payoff is not worth it compared to all the assets that you are giving up. A lot of these teams are overconfident in their own analysis rather than understanding that this is really a lottery ticket or a raffle, so to speak. So moving up in the top 10 when the payoff isn't a quarterback is a process that scares me. Like, doesn't mean they shouldn't do it. Doesn't mean they won't do it. But I would, if I was sitting in that room, I would be cautious of doing something like that.
Excellent point there, Nick. And just for the hell of it, we're going to give you some veto power here. And do you veto the trade? And if you veto the trade and the Lions stay at 7, who would you take in this instance?
Oh man, I would probably honestly take Sewell still, but it's more from the Chargers perspective where, like, I know they need a tackle, but like, you also are going to need pass rushers here in the next few years. I mean, Melvin Ingram's gone. Do you trust Nwosu as that other outside rusher? I don't know if I do. Cornerback, they need help there. The tight end is a neat position to need. Running back's a position to need. And we just talked about it a second ago. Offensive line is more about the depth and how good you are 5 across rather than one guy. So you're giving up those assets. You better be damn sure. And if they're damn sure, then that's fine. But I always would preach caution when trading up for a non-quarterback in the top 10.
Yes, and if the Chargers are unable to move up for Penei Sewell to 7 or 8, if the Panthers want to trade back, Christian Darrisaw is likely going to be available for them at 13. I think he would be a very good pick for them if they stay put there.
Darrisaw, I wouldn't rule him out for a cornerback either. I think that's a team that could take Surtain or Horn. They've shown interest at cornerback, so we'll see.
Yeah, especially with an aging group. You got rid of Casey Hayward and Chris Harris Jr. As much as we both love him, he is unfortunately past his prime, so to speak, and he is not the player he used to be. You need a true stud at that position in the pass-happy AFC West. So I could definitely see why the Chargers are thinking quarterback, and the Chargers are a team that does tend to throw curveballs in the draft. So that corner, it could be a possibility, but they are considering moving up for Penei Sewell based on that nugget from Benjamin Albright. And now moving on to the Panthers at pick 8. And if they are unable to trade back, and Peter King said that Noel and Notfit want more bite at the apple, so to speak, which is understandable because they're still at the beginning of their roster build. This is only their second year of a 6-year partnership. And if they're unable to move down, though, people have been saying it's going to be either Penei Sewell or Rashawn Slater for them at 8. And with Penei Sewell gone at 7 in our exercise, we give them Rashawn Slater here for the sake of it.
Yep, I think it makes sense. I would not completely rule out Micah Parsons. I mean, obviously it depends on what they vet, but they took Yetur Gross-Matos last year, and he was also listed in the locker room hazing incident. So that's something to note as well. Although I think Parsons was more of the ringleader there, from what I picked up compared to Yetur Gross-Matos. Another one to watch out for is Patrick Surtain as well. That's another name that I would not rule out there. And somebody might want to take a defensive player here. Like last year at this time, we were all talking like not only the wide receivers going top 10, but like Tristan Wirfs, Mekhi Becton, Jedrick Wells, and those guys all fell to like pick 10, 11, 14. So
yeah, CeeDee Lamb fell to 17 for crying out loud.
yeah. Sometimes wide receivers slip a little bit. So we'll see what happens there. Offensive tackles. Sometimes they can slip and fall into that like 11 to 20 range. So I wouldn't be surprised if like CJ Henderson last year, the Jags for sure are going to go wide receiver or something like that. It's like, maybe an offensive tackle. Like, it takes one team to say that, you know what, I need to get myself a cornerback because I can't find these guys. So we'll see. But I think for this exercise, Slater makes the most sense. I was between Waddle and Sewell in the last one, but I think even if Sewell was available, from what I understand, Slater is higher on the board for the Panthers. Again, it's that time of year, so it's information, but is it truthful? We'll see.
I guess, but Benjamin Albright has been saying that Rashawn Slater is above Sewell on many teams' boards at tackle.
Just 50-50.
53. Oh, that makes sense because Sewell and Slater are both gifted individuals in their own right, and it's as you say, it's kind of like ice cream, so to speak. Some teams are going for the mint chocolate chip flavor, which we say is Sewell, and the others are going for the chocolate chip cookie dough, which is Slater, so to speak.
Yeah, exactly.
And all right, so to recap what we got in this 10-pick mock so far. Trevor Lawrence at 1 to the Jaguars, Zach Wilson at 2 to the Jets, Trey Lance at 3 to the Niners, Kyle Pitts at 4 to the Falcons, Jamar Chase at 5 to the Bengals, Dolphins trading down with Denver trading up to 6 to take Justin Fields. In a hypothetical deal, the Lions trading with the Chargers getting Penei Sewell, or in Nick's world, the Lions stay put and take Penei Sewell, and the Panthers with Rashawn Slater at 8, and now to the Dolphins at 9. And this is the dream scenario for the Dolphins. You recoup some value to move down, and you get your pick of which weapon to reunite with Tua Tagovailoa. You got Devontae Smith or Jalen Waddle. As much as I love Devontae Smith, Jalen Waddle is the kind of wide receiver that saved the NFL by storm. And if you think Henry Ruggs was the belle of the ball in last year's wide receiver class, you haven't met Jalen Waddle yet. I think Jalen Waddle is an even better prospect than Henry Ruggs. He, I think, fits the Tyreek Hill comparison a lot more than Henry Ruggs did. And Tua, known for that touch and on the deep ball, explosive plays win games. Jalen Waddle would be the pick here if the Dolphins kept it and stayed at 9.
Yep, I think Jalen Waddle is the way to go as well. I mean, he's dynamic, 3-level threat. Ball in his hands. It's not like Henry Ruggs where in theory you'd have the deep ability, but really it was more speed in the quick pass game, like slants and whatnot. Jalen Waddle, I think, is more dynamic at all 3 levels, more natural tracking the football, better getting off press, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, he's just a better receiver than Henry Ruggs. So I think it makes a lot of sense for what the offense needs. I mean, they need to surround Tua with some weapons. It does not sound like they're a team that's prioritizing offensive line early. Also, I believe it was Miami's general manager hinted that they would not take a player that opted out last year. So Waddle falls in that category as well. So he actually fits that mold where he played last year and obviously maybe he won the Heisman if he doesn't get injured. I don't know. I mean, it's possible. He was he was the best wide receiver on that team.
Yes. And a lot of people, not just the draft Twitter, but I assume in the NFL as well, just really loved how he just gutted it out in the national championship game against Ohio State, despite that injury. And it's that kind of intangibles that will endear him to many teams. And that's why I would personally expect Jalen Waddle to be a top 10, 12 pick. And don't sleep on the Arizona Cardinals as a potential team moving up to the range of pick 6 to 9 to get somebody like Jalen Waddle. They reportedly love him and want him. So don't sleep on that scenario either.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that makes a lot of sense. And desperate teams that are in a 1-year window can oftentimes make detrimental decisions for the long-term health of the organization.
Yeah, of course.
Looking at you, Arizona, with Cliff Kingsbury, looking at the Chicago Bears also. So we'll see what happens.
Chicago Bears and also the New England Patriots and Washington football team could be eyeing a quarterback as well. And Dan Snyder is known to want to give up a fortune at Bill Belichick. He may be retiring in the next 5 years, and he might want to win one Super Bowl without Tom Brady. And if he's desperate to do so, he would sell the farm for either Fields or Lance. So more scenarios to pay attention to. But this mock so far, we're on our last pick of this 10-pick mock. Trevor Lawrence to the Jaguars, Zach Wilson to the Jets, Trey Lance to the Niners, Kyle Pitts to the Falcons, Jamar Chase to the Bengals, Dolphins trading down with Denver taking Justin Fields, Detroit trading down with the Chargers taking Penei Sewell, Panthers taking Rashawn Slater, and the Dolphins taking Jalen Waddle. Now you got the Cowboys. And let me just throw this nugget out here. Tony Pauline of the Draft Network is saying that if Penei Sewell is available at 10, the Cowboys are going to take a long, long look at him. Because it's important to know, Tyron Smith, he's probably a future Hall of Famer, but he's probably on the last legs of his career. And based on all that money you pay to Dak, if either Sewell or Slater are here at 10, the Cowboys would be foolish not to seriously consider either one of them, wouldn't they?
Yeah, I think, I mean, that's been Jerry Jones found a goodwill, and he got praised for it a lot too. I think Jerry's looking for that praise, right? So like investing in the offensive line is like, oh man, these guys like that. I thought they'd like the sexy picks, but let's go back to the well and build that offensive line again. But then both off the board here. I think, unfortunately, like for the non-quarterback scenarios, I think either offensive tackle makes sense for Denver. Again, with the Denver light on this, but I don't think either of them are going to make it to 9. But you never know. We'll see. But in this scenario, I probably will go Patrick Surtain just because he's safer than J.C. Horn. And I think he fits the Dan Quinn defense much better for Dallas. So that's the direction that I would lean for their cover 3 scheme opposite Trevon Diggs.
Both Patrick Surtain and Trevon Diggs played together at Alabama, and that relationship could give them an advantage to hit the ground running.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And especially in a year where it's a weird process, right? No combine, weird season, et cetera, et cetera. Surtain's about as safe of a player as you can draft. And I think there is value in that, any draft, but especially in this one. So I think Patrick Surtain maybe not a true number 1 dominant cornerback, not an island guy, even though like there's not one of those guys every single year. That's fine. But I think he's got the ability to be a good, solid primary, boundary cornerback for a team. And I would have no issue with him here. And Dallas needs a lot of work on defense, but it's got to be able to cover guys. Yeah. They don't have enough horses back there.
We will give the Cowboys Patrick Surtain the second in this mock, but just for the sake of it, Benjamin Albright said on his radio show just in March that he thought the Cowboys were in love with J.C. Horn, and J.C. Horn, if they had to go corner at 10, Horn might be the leader in the clubhouse for this pick here. I wouldn't be surprised if it's Surtain, just to be clear, but J.C. Horn does appear to have a lot of fans in that Cowboys building, so to speak, and that is something to work for. And Nick Kendell, milehighhuddle.com, thank you so much once again for joining us on this week until anniversary, so to speak, or pre-versary of the 2021 NFL Draft. But before we sign off here, every year when we get to the later part of the first round, there's a name that appears that usually shocks us all at this time, and it could we can easily see multiple names like that this year, especially given the value being close in proximity from like picks 8 to 32 and on, and the lack of information on these players. Many surprises. One surprise that was floated as a potential first round surprise was Carlos Boogie Basham, the pass rusher out of Wake Forest, as a potential first round candidate, according to Eric Galko of Optimus Scouting. Any other potential surprises you see in the first round, especially the later part?
I think there's going to be another quarterback that comes off the board. I think there's a chance that Davis Mills or Kellen Mond, somebody's going to take a swing. So that will surprise some people, but it's a quarterback position, man. If Paxton Lynch can go in the first round, so can them.
Yes. Any other potential surprises that come to your mind outside of the quarterback position in Boogie Basham?
A deep sleeper here would maybe somebody taking a shot on Milton Williams, right? Like that's a really bad interior defensive line class.
La Tech, yeah.
Yes, La Tech, exactly. He tested really well. I know he has suboptimal arm length, not the best guy at planting his butt in the ground and anchoring, but man, he's explosive. And if somebody likes him more than Levi Onwuzurike,
I think that's how you
Onwuzurike, then that would be that'd be a long shot, but that's one that could be interesting. Also, Peyton Turner, another guy that might sneak in the back end there, but we'll see. And I'm not even throwing out Joe Tryon because I'm assuming he's going to go in the first round.
Yeah, Joe Tryon. A lot of people have him going well before 32, and lots of intriguing edge rushers that with intriguing upside. A lot of teams are going to take swings out of that upside in the 20s in this draft. So that's where I think we could expect the edge run to begin. Wouldn't you say so?
Yeah, I mean, it could be earlier too because teams love those edge rushers. But
Raiders could use another.
Raiders could use another. The Vikings could use one. The Chargers could use one. The Eagles could use one. So you know me, man. If you cannot have enough pass rushers. So if there's one that fits there that you like, go for it.
And once again, he is Nick Kendell of MileHighHuddle.com. Follow him on Twitter at Nick Kendell MHH. And that is it for tonight. But join me again at approximately 7:55 Eastern Time sharp next Thursday night, where I will be joined by my friends Andrew Weedman and Billy Rossetti as we take you through a live stream of round one of the 2021 NFL Draft, analyzing each pick as they come in, and letting you know what it means for your favorite team. And I will also be back on the air Friday night, April 30th, for rounds 2 and 3. With my good buddy Vic Singh co-hosting and several guests popping in, including Cole Thompson, Nick's colleague Carl Dumler plans to stop by, and hopefully we can get Mark Schofield to stop by as well. So it's going to be a fun next Thursday and Friday here at Sports Crunch right here on StreamYard. Watch us on our YouTube channel or on Facebook. You can catch it and not miss a minute at either of those locations. And if you want to hear what Nick has to say about the draft, follow him on Twitter at Nick Kendell MHH. For Nick Kendell, this is David Cromwell saying so long, and as usual, stay awesome, stay safe, and please get your COVID-19 vaccine. Whatever's available to you right now, just get it. If we want full football stadiums in the fall, vaccines are the way to go. Take care, everybody.